What's going on, guys? Today we're talking about WWE 2K19, why it might be better than you think, and might possibly be the best wrestling game. We're going to go over the modes, the gameplay, and of course, Big Head mode. So when you first load up 2K19, firstly, it's very bright, but you also hear that wonderful song. Blow my mind. Thanks, Daniel Bryan. And then we have the menu, and I really like this look. Seeing the characters fade away, it was definitely inspired by Thanos. Obviously, if there's one thing I would have liked, it would have been a dark mode, but it is what it is. Next up, we have Showcase mode, featuring the Yes Man himself, Daniel Bryan. As we went through his trials and tribulations, from a rookie in NXT, to working his way up to the main roster, the highs and lows of becoming champion, having to retire, but then ultimately fighting for his dreams. I honestly really enjoyed this mode at the time, especially the matches with The Miz at Night of Champions, his matches with John Cena at SummerSlam, Kane at Extreme Rules where he dove off the forklift, that had to hurt. It was pretty cool to see, especially since Showcase mode hadn't been in the series since WWE 2K17 with the Hall of Fame DLC. And yeah, I felt like the objectives worked well with the cutscenes they were implementing. My only gripe with the mode was that there was only 11 matches, and I understand people like CM Punk weren't in the game, so you couldn't have done his rivalry with Daniel Bryan and AJ Lee from Over the Limit to Money in the Bank 2012. But I would have liked matches like his excellent match against Dolph Ziggler at 2010's Bragging Rights, him and Kane against Dolph Ziggler and Biggie Langston. The ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship would have been fun. Actually, that probably would have been more annoying now that I think about it. But we move on. So aside from Showcase mode, we had Towers mode, which was essentially a mode where you face various opponents one after the other without losing. And even though I did appreciate the effort 2K put into it with the $1 Million Tower, the mode itself wasn't really worth it. You could just play matches all day in exhibition and get VC that way. But at least they had various other towers, like the Nature Boy Tower, which even shows you details about the legends like Roddy Piper, which is a pretty cool feature. Also, I really like the added stipulations, like a table match, or no escaping the ring, or my personal favourite, making the game super fast. And at least 2K went to the effort of having different difficulties for each tower, from normal, to hard, to legend. And they had unique names, like Jericho's List to represent his time in WCW, Fandango Tango to represent Fandango and his awesome dance moves, and we can't forget Sweet Chin Music to represent... Okay, yeah, that was just his finishing move. Moving on. So up next we have My Player, and this was a massive leap for the series, as previous 2K career modes have been criticised for not having a proper linear story, with 2K15, 16 and 17 essentially being a season mode but without any clear direction. And in 18, while there was an original story, the lack of any voiceover made it not as enjoyable. Also, the lack of running around the parking lot was definitely not fun. But in 2K19, things changed. We had an original voice story focused around the career of Buzz, his enemies and allies, his rise from the indies with BCW and Baron Blade, remember that guy, and his interactions with Matt Hardy and the Multiverse, a zombie Triple H, and much more. Overall, I really enjoyed this career mode, as there was a lot of twists and turns, and it just felt like a more complete story than the previous years. And finally, we have the thing that makes 2K19, in my opinion, one of the best wrestling games, and that's the gameplay. The gameplay is just phenomenal, pun intended. From when you first start the match, you can either start off with strikes and grapples, or you can enter chain wrestling, and I love this feature. It's the little things from being able to strike your opponent, whether it's a headlock or any other position like on the ground. And another cool thing is, say your opponent has you in a headlock, one of the animations from winning the minigame is making them ricochet against the ropes to deliver a strike/grapple. Another thing is, if you both press the same button, you get pushed against the ropes, in which you can let the referee separate you. Or if you're a heel, you can strike the opponent with the referee not being too happy. I love that feature. And again, there's so many things. From your opponent crawling in the corner or against the ropes, in which you can deliver a strike/grapple, and also the fact that they actually sell moves for a long time. I just feel like this game can simulate realistic wrestling no matter the time frame. Whether it's the Attitude Era in 1998, WCW 1997, the Golden Eras in the 1980s, or 2018 Raw/SmackDown when the game released. Especially when you compare it to 2K23 and other wrestling games. Because don't get me wrong, 2K23 does a decent job at simulating wrestling, but the crawling out the ring animations, they're a bit too quick compared to 2K19, and the strikes don't have different selling animations, whereas 19 does. from dropping to a knee, to turning around, whether it's a punch, a kick, a jab, there's so much variety, and that's why I love 2K19, because of how much depth there is to the game. Not to mention, things like the different amount of tied finishes, and the unique submission system, where instead of button mashing, it's a game of cat and mouse trying to catch your opponent out. It just makes everything flow and feel authentic. And don't get me wrong, I understand there are people who don't like 2K19. They say it's too slow, it's boring, etc. But I think there's a way to play the game that makes it fun. I guess the best way I can describe it is 2K19 feels like a great game for role-playing a match, not just trying to beat your opponent. And with 2K23, that game is great for online, because it's a guessing game, trying to figure out your opponent's moves and then strategize against it. It has done well in that area, and I could easily see it being an esports contender. But with 2K19, it just ticks all the boxes. Like for example, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. Sure, it's a fun game. You can do crazy things like jump off a helicopter and throw your opponent off Times Square, and it's a fun arcadey experience. But I feel like the novelty wears off, because all the animations are the same. And WWF No Mercy, it's a great game. The strike animation depending on how hurt your opponent is, I do like that feature, and it is satisfying seeing a strong strike. But with 19, it feels like a wrestling simulator because the moves you do at the start that are quick, slow down as the match goes on, and it just makes each match feel different. Especially when you fight bigger opponents, with them having different cells to running strikes, even regular strikes. Even some strikes actually hurt yourself, which is interesting. And the Pele kick, the cells make it stand out even more. And when your opponent has taken a high amount of damage, the referee checks on them to make sure they're okay. I really like this, as even though it doesn't affect the outcome of the match, it still adds another layer to the gameplay. Also, we have to mention the roster size of current day stars, like Finn Balor, AJ Styles and Roman Reigns, as well as the legends like Ric Flair, the Big Boss Man and Randy Savage. And the models themselves, you could even say that they look better than 2K23. They have this photorealistic look, whereas 23 has a more video game look. And let's not forget that 19 carried us through the dark ages after the disaster that was 2K20. Let's not talk about that. But yeah, I love this game, and I still play it to this day. Getting to play as guys like Jason Jordan, Sting, Chris Jericho, Christian, it's a fun experience. And I can safely say if someone said to me, okay, here's 2K23, it's the latest wrestling game, it has all the new superstars, etc. Or you can have 2K19 with mods available every year. I would choose 19 hands down, because I feel like simulation is the way forward, because we always love different things in real life wrestling. We want each match to stand out from each other, and that's what 2K19 does. I just feel like they hit that sweet spot in gameplay, because 2K15 was too slow and that was too realistic, whereas over the years they made it a bit faster, and with this one, they've hit the balance. Don't get me wrong, the game's not perfect. It definitely doesn't flow the best during multi-man matches as opposed to one-on-ones. We didn't have match types like special guest referee, which we still don't have by the way. Moves onto weapons don't have the same reactions that SmackDown vs Raw 2011 did, and the lighting in some areas was nowhere to be seen. But the fact that we could do moves without having to grapple, I loved that, because it made for cool moments, and we need that back. Oh, and big head mode. Definitely a fun thing at the time, but in hindsight, it wasn't really needed. But at least it was something different. Also guys, we have to mention universe mode. Although there wasn't a lot of changes, at least we could cash in money in the bank whenever we wanted. We got that cool cutscene with The Undertaker whenever you beat him at WrestleMania. And there was promos, and we need those back. They added to the mode, because it broke up that repetitiveness of having match after match, and it was cool seeing a wrestler in t-shirts instead of their usual wrestling attire. It made the match feel that much more important. And you could even attack your opponent after the face-off, which again made the match feel that much more important. Don't get me wrong, there was obvious flaws, like the amount of rivalries only being free, and it only being limited to one-on-one or tag team. But that's a different video for a different day. So guys, that is why I love 2K19, and why I think it's better than a lot of people think. I understand some of you will agree, and some of you will disagree, but you can let me know in the comments below, subscribe, and more importantly, take care.